Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Veteran retailer April Sabral is back on the podcast to tell us all about her second new book, Incurable Positivity. She talks about her 7-step process, which can be completed in just 7 days and then practiced for a lifetime, to generate better physical and emotional health, proven benefits to your physical well-being, track the people, resources, and opportunities you desire, and create more happiness, mindfulness, and contentment. April also shares her advice for retailers as they work to bring in new people into the business and, importantly, keep their talent engaged and loyal. Let's listen in now. April Sabral, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. Welcome back, I should say. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for having me, Michael. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Well, it's wonderful to have you back on the pod. Fellow retail influencer, Canadian, now coming to me live from Lisbon, a city I love. And what are you doing there? Let's start there. What are you doing in Portugal?
I'm just taking a break. I just launched a new book.
Nice. What brought you to Europe? What were you doing? Like you're not taking a break down the
No,
people.
yeah. I came.
You're a world traveler, but taking a break at Lisbon is not it's not like you're taking the day off. What are you doing in Europe?
So I came over to Paris with Fashion Innovation, which is a media platform that brings technology and sustainable brands together in the fashion industry. And so they were doing a tour. It's called their Paris Mission. They're doing it in different cities now. So I came along on that and held a workshop on positive leadership with all the group that were together. So some of them were founders from brands, some of them were from tech companies. So, I was here and I was like, well, I'm already in Europe. I might as well just go around a bit. So that's what I initially came over to do. And it was super fun.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, I've seen you, I think, post often from Florida, for example, but I don't know if that's a COVID thing or where are you based now? You and I, of course, met here in Toronto, but where do you hang your hat?
I am based now in Hoboken, New Jersey, just outside New York City. I've been there for about a year and a half.
You got a new book out, and what a great accomplishment. I wanted to get you on the mic and have you tell us all about it. It's racing up the charts. But for those who, I don't know, who the few who may not know you or know enough about you or heard our earlier conversation, tell us about your background and what you do for a living.
Yeah, I have been in retail, sales and operations, running stores for the past 3 decades, up until about 6 years ago. And I worked my way up. I got a job in a store at 17, got kicked out of home and got a part-time sales gig and just stuck with it and became a senior vice president of 250 stores for DAVIDsTEA in Canada. And in between all of that, I moved from the UK to the US to Canada, and I worked for brands like Apple, Starbucks, Banana Republic, Holt Renfrew, Laura Canada, a few more. And always been in the store side, and then decided to build Retail U. So I founded Retail U, which is an online on-demand leadership training platform for retail store managers and district managers. And while doing that, wrote a book called The Positive Effect. So that was my first book. Mm-hmm. And so that then founded aprilsabral.com, which is leadership coaching, because that is my passion. I've been doing that while I was building store teams my whole life. Mm-hmm. And now I am actually getting trained to go into store manager conferences. So I'm building a training team now to train the book, the first book, The Positive Effect. We turned it into a workshop. And so this year we have trained L'Oreal in LA. We are training Victoria's Secrets International in April and Jimmy Choo at their managers conference in April too. So this is really exciting because to now see... Wow. I know I have a new book, but I'll get to this. But the Positive Effect Leadership Methodology Act, which I have been practicing my whole life and building positive teams, positive cultures, and therefore positive customer experiences and results, to now see that go into a workshop and be able to, impart that knowledge and see these managers like eat it up. And now companies ready for this positive leadership is just a dream come true. So I'm really excited about this more than anything because, it's not just doing it with one organization now, it's doing it with many, which are actually getting it. So I love it.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, when somebody, when you walk into a coffee shop in Lisbon and somebody says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" Like, what's the elevator version of that? Because you're such a you're a Renaissance individual. How do you sum it up? How do you think of yourself as not as a retailer, I guess, anymore? But how would you describe yourself?
I would say I'm a leadership coach. I help retailers train and develop their managers to be positive coaches so that they can have positive results. That's it. Through workshops, through on-demand courses.
Fantastic. All right. So, as we hinted, you've released a second book, Incurable Positivity, 7 Steps to Shift from Negative to Positive in 7 days. And you tell me it's racing up the charts. I checked it out on Amazon, and for sure it's ranking high. Let's start at the beginning. You've mentioned your first book and the reaction to it. What compelled you to write the second book?
As I started to train out the first book to organizations at the beginning of last year, through a workshop, through one-on-one coaching, the second pillar in the first leadership methodology is called Create. So the method is called Act, Accept, Create, Teach. And Create is the second pillar. And in that second pillar, I go into very lightly positive thinking and what your positive thinking does to your results. Basically, what you think about comes about. Mm-hmm. And we talk about beliefs. We talk about negative thinking, the impact of that on your business, on your people. And so every time I would train that out, people would ask me more about that because I'm a very positive person. Most people say that interact with me, and then they just keep asking me about that all the time. And so I guess because we've been through a traumatic collective experience in the last couple of years, and retail got hit really, really hard, from the people side of the business, and we can talk about that later, but people just kept asking me like more about that. And when I talk about it, and then like, how do you maintain your positivity? Because you seem really positive all of the time. And so I started to realize very quickly that positivity is a skill, and it's something that I practice because actually I'm not just a naturally positive person. I'm a naturally optimistic person. But positivity is like a skill, like communicating, managing conflict. It's something that I practice every day in my life. And so I went through, some emotional stuff personally last year and had to kind of dig deep and bring up those practices of being positive every day, even more so. And so,
is it like an affirmation for you do you start the day? I guess I'm tapping into your wisdom here. Do you start the day with something like an affirmation? Do you just, when negative thoughts kind of start to creep in, you kind of push them out with positive vibes? Like, to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I do. So negative thinking, I mean, we all have it. We have 6,000 thoughts a day. I talk about this in the book, and 80% of them are negative because we are just programmed that way. Self-doubt, whatever it is. And I go into detail in that. But there is things that I do, like I said, to like practice this skill. And so it is literally in the morning when I wake up, I do a meditation, I do positive programming, which is listening to affirmations in headsets, like positive thoughts that I need to hear. And I do writing a journal, gratitude, like lots of things that people talk about. Like, this is not new information, right? Like the self-help gurus talk about it. But I feel like it's always like, be more practical, like how. So when you're getting enrolled in a negative conversation with somebody, how do you avoid that conversation? Because you can't. And what do you do with it in that moment? And I think I really learned this in retail, because retail is a sales-driven business. When you're running stores, you're only as good as yesterday's sales. And so today, when you wake up and you look at that comp number and you're like, oh my God, like it's not good. How do I get everybody motivated and get everybody positive and like keep them like, today's a new day, we can do it kind of thing. And everybody that works in sales and operations will relate to that, because so literally this is what I've practiced for a very long time. And so I put it all in 7 steps to make it very practical.
Tell me about the tradecraft of writing the book. So I talked to a lot of authors, and some authors really kind of envision the whole book and then just race to scribble it down. Some kind of, really have to work hard at it, writing words a day. How did you approach writing the book, the tradecraft of being an author? It's your second book, so you're a little more familiar with at least the process. But talk about your own personal process.
Yeah, it just became this one, because it's a very short book. It's 100 pages. The other one was like 220. So if it's a short pages, you want to keep it under a certain word count, because I want to make it so you can pick it up, put it in your pocket, take it with you and use it every day like a practical workbook. But I just literally sat down and wrote down the 7 steps of like, how do I actually maintain this positivity and this positive thinking? and just started to expand it. I have an editor, publisher, Angie, who wrote the first book with me, who actually approached me to write a series on the positive effects. So that is coming. But I said to her, no, before we do that, I have to get this out. Like, I feel compelled. So we just started writing it. And for me, it's just natural, Michael. It's just what's on my heart. And when you read the books, everybody says like they feel like they're having a conversation with me, because it really is just me, writing down what my thoughts are and sharing them. And I've always been a coach and an educator. So when I write to educate and teach. So I've just got better at writing over the past couple of years. But this one just came out in 45 days. I literally wrote it over.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're like a rock star, just like the music hit you, and you just had to get it down on paper, right? Just the race to get it down on paper. You start the book with a very interesting dedication. Tell me about it.
The dedication, yeah. Well, I've been through a lot in my life, and I always look at everything as a lesson learned, and I'm really grateful for every experience. And so when I look at my life at this point, and I've got a lot more to live, is just to be grateful for every experience I've had, and that has taught me something. And, that's taught me to be really positive. So the dedication is dedicated to all of those people I've had obstacles with in my life, and of course me some challenges, because I think that's, again, me demonstrating positive thinking. And when I've had challenges with people, I actually say, thank you. Like, I've learned something from this. And I think that in itself creates more positive things, more positive people towards you, more positivity in your life, instead of getting stuck there in the negative.
Walk us through the book. So you've already given us many, many hints about the length and the focus, and I guess the 7 steps in 7 days gives us an idea of the structure. But give us a hint, give the listeners a hint about the book, and tell us a bit more.
Yeah. So the 7 chapters. Each chapter is very short. It's very brief. And at the end of every chapter, there is a self-reflection questions, because I'm a coach naturally. So I'm always going to ask thought-provoking questions. And so you can journal that out. And then there's a call to action. Again, I want to make this very practical, not theory-based, so that
give me an example. Give the listeners an example of one of your thought-provoking questions.
Yeah. So if I look at the Be Committed, which is the first chapter, which people that did the pre-read, they were like, how can Be Committed be the first chapter of a positive book?
You're starting off in a high place. You're getting right in.
I'm like, well, if you're not committed to having a positive mindset, you might as well put the book down now, because I can't help you. Literally, that's in the book.
Or be committed. You got to finish this book. It's start here, but finish the book. Yeah.
You do, because we break commitments to ourselves all the time, and then that kills our self-esteem, and then we start beating up on ourselves, which is a negative thought process. So you have to be committed, right? But one of the self-reflection questions is in the Be Committed chapter, is the first one is, what commitments have you made to yourself that you have not followed through on yet? That's a thought-provoking question, right? You'd be like, let me think about that. And then what doubts do you have about your current commitments? Because a lot of times we overcommit to things. Yeah. And especially in retail sales and operations.
It's hard to say no sometimes, right? I mean, that's the weight or the challenge of being a positive person is you always want to say yes, because you always want to be there for people, and you're just, I can do that. But that can get you into a bit of trouble, right?
Well, yeah, because what you actually do when you do that is you break agreements with people. And a lot of the times what I talk about in the book is you keep agreements with other people, but you actually break them to yourself. But when you do that, you're actually then living in this internal mental negative place, because again, you're killing your self-esteem every time you do that. And that's not what people see externally, right? People think, oh, you're so positive, you've got all this success, whatever it is.
You're a do-it-all, take it all on kind of person.
Yeah, especially if you're an overachiever, which I'm definitely an overachiever in my life. And I know a lot of other leaders that are that way, or just people. So I think you have to kind of really reflect on that, because if your commitment is your word is worth $1 million. What would you actually commit to today, and what would you follow through on that you haven't yet?
So 7 chapters, it goes through there, and that's a great framework. Now, I can't miss the opportunity to have somebody with your background and skills and lifetime in retail on the mic and just start sharing the kind of wisdom for listeners. We've touched on it before. Retailers are telling me every day that if the supply chain was their biggest problem during the COVID era. Right now, it's people. People were never easy. I mean, it was never easy to hire the right people and keep the right people. But now it's worse than it ever has been. And given the demographics, retirement, and all those other things, it's not a short term issue. So, what are your tips from both your experience and the work you do and what your clients ask you? What are your tips for finding the right people and then importantly keeping them? What are some of the most important things that you've got to do?
I think it's the same as it has been before. I just think people have less tolerance for accepting poor leadership now. So I'd say three things. I think you have to look at your people. Who is your leadership? Because you can count on great leaders will recruit great people because people want to work for great leaders. Great people want to work for great leaders. So that's number one. Look at your people. Look at the way that they are developing. Look at the way that they're doing their recruitment, their networking. Because, I had a contract last year with a Canadian retailer in New York, and we hired 217 people in the height of the COVID spike through Christmas. Right. And that was why? Because was it just me? No, it wasn't me. It was the leaders that were there and how we got them excited and what we were doing with them to do and to attract talent. So,
I mean, retailers are telling me that, they just people aren't even showing up for the interviews they sign up for, and then not even showing up for the job. Some of that's beyond your control, certainly. You hearing the same things? And
well, the other two steps I would say is look at your pay scale. I'm a big advocate for paying people right. Like people are not going to come and work for the minimum wage when they can get a job at Starbucks for more money. Because there was a survey done in New York where they surveyed a mass amount of young people saying where would they want to work if they were going to go and get their first part-time job. And Starbucks came up as number one because of schooling, because of the pay structure, because of the benefit structure. Retail was number 4. Hospitality was right down the line. So I think you have to look at your pay structures now and figure that out because people want to get paid, right? Like people can make side hustles now. They can make money through other brands like Poshmark selling their closet or Teespring making their own brands. So if you want to attract people, you've got to compensate them really well. And then processes. I think processes and practices in stores. Through the pandemic, everybody had to shift to figure out how to ship from store, right? Like if you were not there already, which some retailers had done that really well, but some had not. So then they had to figure it out. And if they put all of that operational practices on the store teams very manually, well, now you've just added a whole load of workload and complexity and people are tired. And so your processes and your practices really matter, which means get the right technology, like make sure that your shipping from store is speaking to the other systems and you're not having people, print something out, on a handmade document and then taping it up. And then, no, get them the right printers with the right stickers that can, make it seamless. So I think those three things, people, pay, and processes. And I think they've always been that, Michael, but I feel like within those three buckets, there is things that have shifted and changed. And that's what needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I hear. Those are great foundational elements. I hear things like the benefits, the mix of benefits, but I also hear consistency because that's always been a knock, or not always been a knock, but can be a knock from the retail employees. That the pay is great, but I'm not getting the hours I need. And as you know, the operators sometimes say, "Listen, I got to up, down, or sideways the workload or the workforce in the store to make the budget." Are you experiencing that, or is that a big advantage, the consistency in the employees' lives?
100%. But where does that consistency come from? It comes from having a great leader and a great manager of that store. I mean, running stores for as long as I did and as many stores as I did, I could tell you when I walked into a store if the manager was operationally sound, well-trained, a good leader, knew how to communicate, knew how to write a schedule, knew how to delegate, all of those things that go into being a positive leader and a positive coach, and not like bringing their stress and their anxiety onto their team. I mean, they're human people, so they are going to do that. But that's another reason why this book is so important, because this teaches you how to manage your own negativity, your own challenges, and to be more positive. Because when you do that, you will create more of that in the team that you lead. And they will feel it and your customers will feel it and people will stay, because people always leave because of their boss. always, like I have conversations with people all day. I'm resigning. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to go get another job. Why? Because my boss just doesn't listen to me. They're not developing me. They're not giving me the resources and tools to do my job well. That's it. So, training your leaders, your store managers now, I think is a non-negotiable, and don't take it for granted that they know how to do it. There's a lot of new leaders now. There was a lot of people that exited and there's a lot of people that got promoted, like literally key holders, assistant managers that became store managers overnight just because they had to.
Sure.
And so what have we done to support them, right? That's where Retail U is really important as well, the online on-demand training, because it really supports them develop those skills.
The book is Incurable Positivity, 7 Steps to Shift from Negative to Positive in 7 days. April, where can folks buy your book?
They can buy it on Amazon and download it on Kindle, and it will be in audio next week.
Oh, that's exciting. Now, where can people get in touch if they want to get in touch with you? Are you a LinkedIn person? Go to your website. Tell us about that.
Yeah, go to my website, actually. There's a scheduled time with me. It's a free 15-minute call. If you want to talk more about you're looking for help, you can schedule time. It goes right into my calendar. Or you can just email me at april@retailu, which is retail, U for university.ca. And
that's the website as well, retailu.ca?
There's two. So there's retailu.ca, which is the online. But if you want to get in touch with me, it's better to go to aprilsabral.com.
Well, very good. April, thanks so much for taking the time out of your break in wonderful Lisbon to chit and chat. Congratulations on your second book. I wish you nothing but tremendous success, which you're already achieving right out the gate. So congratulations on that. And thanks again for joining me. I look forward to running into you in the next retail event. And until then, travel and be safe. And like I said, thanks for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's such a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure to check out my other retail industry media properties, Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis, and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, consumer growth consultant, president of Emmy LeBlanc and Company, Inc., Maven Media, and keynote speaker. If you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Safe travels, everyone.